G'day and welcome to the MacPack.
We're back.
My name's Shane McKenna, and to my left this week in order of the most recent radio debutant on the panel, it's my little brother Joe. How are you, boy?
Feeling good now. I've popped my radio cherry.
And we're away. And to my right, coming in at 6'1", as he does each and every week, it's the baby brother of the pack, who we call Junior Boy. Junior Boy, how are you, mate?
I was very, very stoked to be able to pop Joe's cherry last weekend.
Jesus. Boys, huge episode on this week's episode of the podcast. We are incredibly fortunate enough to be speaking with none other than Tim Blackwell.
Hell yes!
For most people, Tim Blackwell is part of like the Kate, Tim, Marty show on Nova. Now the Ricki-Lee, Tim and Joel show. Quite a mouthful of words. And he's absolutely dominated Nova. He's been on the Nova station for the last 22 years. Absolutely dominating. He's a huge idol of ours, and we were stunned at the ability to get to have a chat with Tim. Let's get into it. Boys!
Domingo.
How are we all?
Fan-freaking-tastic and very excited for this week's episode.
I'm incredibly excited.
What have we got lined up, JG?
As we mentioned off the top, this week we are incredibly excited to have none other than Nova's finest, Tim Blackwell, joining us on the podcast. Tim, as I made mention to, first came into our lives from being basically part of the Kate, Tim, Marty show on Nova in, I think it was 2014, 2015.
Yep.
I listened to every single show of their radio careers essentially over that decade. And then obviously you've been listening to Ricki-Lee, Tim and Joel ever since.
Yeah,
Basically
fantastic.
since 2021.
Yeah, I remember I used to listen to them in the car with Mum. Mum would always have it on.
Yeah.
And my favourite thing was listening to them hang up on callers.
Oh, yeah. We didn't even get into like the specific segments that they used to do. But we did have a very nice chat about a very like whole gamut of stuff regarding radio. Because as we mentioned in many episodes earlier when we're sort of talking about what we wanted to achieve this year, as we do every year, we sort of take stock, go, okay, for 2024, this is what we want to achieve. And I think you and I were very big on making sure that we gave it a red hot crack doing radio. I've obviously changed up a few things in my life over the last 6 to 12 months to make that
A priority.
yeah. And so to think that we got to speak with him was absolutely outlandish, and we were incredibly fortunate to do so.
That's right. And Joey's New Year's resolution obviously was to clear up the rash, which he did. Yay! Black has graduated from AFTRS, the Australian Film, Television and Radio School, with a graduate diploma in commercial radio and broadcasting in 2001. In the same year, Tim received his first job in the industry at one of the leading radio networks in Australia, Nova, of which he has stayed since.
We must also mention that in a hilarious turn of events, a couple of weeks ago, you sent through, and we mentioned this in our chat.
I was at the gym with my good friend Cade. Shout out Cade. We went to Karen Up Shopping Centre to pump out a nice chest workout. And my phone buzzed about halfway through the workout, and it said, I think he's at is T Black 31 or something. Followed you back. And I was like, interesting.
Yes.
So I went on, had a look, and then I immediately screenshot it and sent to our family chat. Because even Mum is a massive fan of Tim.
Yeah.
She used to listen to Kate, Tim, Marty religiously. 'Cause she really related to Kate.
Yeah, that's
Just
right.
being absolutely abused by
By a household of young boys.
that's it, yeah. And and then everyone was like, "Oh my god, wow!" And then he replied to my story, and we've been in communication since, and we've been lucky enough to now have him on the show.
And it was such a bizarre thing that occurred, and we just thought it would be dumb of us not to try and chase this up. And when something like that sort of happens, for the most part, you're expecting it to be quite a blunt, like, "Oh, that was an accident," or just like a straight back, like, "Thanks, man, love your work," and leave it at that. But Tim was so kind in every communication we've ever had since with him, and he was so forthcoming and very open to be involved with the podcast stuff, and hopefully we continue our little connection and relationship with him moving forward.
Yeah, fantastic.
Obviously, people say, like, don't meet your heroes, because obviously we've mentioned that he's one of our idols in the industry.
Yeah, don't meet your heroes unless it's Tim Blackwell. It seems to be the learning that we've taken, because he's an absolute superstar, and the next half an hour, 40 minutes, he's going to demonstrate exactly that. Ladies and gents, it gives us the greatest of all pleasures to welcome to the podcast, Mr. Tim Blackwell. Alrighty, Tim Blackwell, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, mate. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, boys. Thanks for having me on the other side of the country. It's a pleasure.
Obviously, Tim, you're coming to us live from the Nova studios. How's it feel to be talking to some local boys in their back room of their house?
What do you mean? Is this the Nova studio? This is my setup at home. Well, I don't. What can you see? What can you see?
We've got the big sign. We've got your face, obviously, and then that's exactly right. So you're getting heaps of good free advertising as well.
Yeah, that's our mega screen. Yeah, that's right. I love it. And then people that just like throw up shit YouTube videos that we can talk about on the radio. It's the best.
Yeah, cool.
Fantastic. And a lot of screens. It looks very high tech, even though computers in front of you.
Lots of screens. There's and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cameras. And you've probably seen the show on Instagram.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a pretty nice little spaceship set up in here. I pretty much know how to do about 10% of everything that the studio can actually do. But that's the impressive part, I guess. I like your setup. Where'd you get your tablecloth from?
And we're off.
It's actually a bed sheet.
It's a bed sheet.
I don't sleep with a bed sheet so that we can have one for the show.
Wow, a black bed sheet. You've got to be very careful with that.
Dangerous.
We normally start the show by explaining a little bit of who you are. So if you were able to tell us, just for those who may be a little bit unequipped, can you just run us through a bit of your life story and who you are, Tim?
Well, my name is Timothy Blackwell, no middle name, so that's interesting, I guess. I was born on the 10th of August in 1981, a long time ago, and all I've really ever wanted to do is the radio. I wanted to be a pizza delivery boy at one point for Pizza Hut. You guys are probably too young, but there used to be pizza delivery cars that used to drive around with big red telephones on the roof, and I just wanted to drive one of those. So now it's just all guys on bikes with little high-vis boxes on the back of their bikes. But I wanted to do that until I was about 6, and then I got like a young talent time, like guitar, amplifier, and microphone set, and for the first time ever heard the sound of my own voice, which is why my headphones are at an incredibly loud level now. And after that, I just like to talk and talk into a mic. So all I wanted to do was radio, did community radio. There weren't podcasts when I started, so I just kind of worked for free at every radio station around the country, and mainly in Hobart, where I grew up, and then in Sydney when I went to school. And then got to start on Nova, really, after doing the Australian Film, Television and Radio School in Sydney. And if I'm going to make it local for you guys, launched the Nova 937 radio station back in 2001. I was the first very shit-scared voice on that radio station after Lose Yourself by Eminem, and then I was in a room with the Red Hot Chili Peppers for about an hour and a half, and the rest is history, I guess. Here I am.
How exciting.
Very stressful. Obviously, Tim, that's a great introduction, but your introduction to us came from us being, some pretty big fans of the Kate Tim Marty show back in
2014 all the way through.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, of recent times, you followed me on Instagram.
Yeah.
Good idea, buddy. As soon as you said you're a fan, I'm like, oh, well, let's see what this guy's all about.
How did that come about? Me and Joe, he sent us through a little screenshot on a late Friday night and went, hey, Tim Blackwell's just started following my personal Instagram account. Me and Joe were both equally shocked and disappointed that we didn't receive the same notification.
Have I not done that yet?
No,
Surely
mate,
by
flat as a tape. Well, how'd you find Riley? Why'd you find Riley of all of us?
Well, didn't you must have written something to me or liked something or whatever. And then I looked at you're doing some radio thing out somewhere, speaking to girls at you had a radio mic, I think, speaking to girls at some show or something, some festival. Well, no, this looks all right. I was like to look at because also the other thing is strangely I don't know, this might not come as a surprise to you, but there's not many people wanting to get into radio anymore, I've noticed. And right. I also find people who do are a dime a dozen. So if you're half decent, I would like to see what's going on. And also, strangely still, even the bosses here like ask me who's around. So why to you it might look creepy and a bit sus. I'm more looking for young, untapped talent, so I can share it with the bosses.
Fantastic. Well, that's exciting. We like to hear that.
But I promise to follow the rest of you. Oh, hang on. Let me do it right now. I got Riley's already there. Okay, there you go. Jake, you're done.
Look at him go. I like it. It does feel like a bit of a hostage situation.
Whoa. Joe doesn't follow me at all.
Nah, fuck him then. Fuck him.
So I'm not hitting follow on anyone that doesn't say follow.
Fair enough.
I only follow people that says follow back.
There you go. I love it. You touched earlier just then on launching Nova in Perth. That was obviously a huge thing. Can you run us through what that was like? Because you were bloody young at the time.
Well, the first thing is, well, I don't know, because I go to Perth a bit still, because I've got family there, and I do love it. But there was this weird thing about Eastern staters coming over stealing all your jobs, which I found very hard to deal with when I was young, because they're like, what's some guy from bloody Sydney coming to launch our radio station? But I was shit scared. And weirdly, I mean, I will talk myself up here because this is a pretty good flex. But of course, it was the breakfast show at the time that was supposed to launch the station. And about a year before it launched, I went to the States to a little junket with the Red Hot Chili Peppers and hung out and did some interviews with them at the Chateau Marmont, blah, 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 blah. And from what I found out, they saw that I was a potential to launch the station with them, and they chose me to do it.
Oh,
So
that's good.
that was pretty massive, actually. So as I was so shit scared, though, Flea called my mum to see if I was breastfed. They swore in the first 10 seconds. I had Lord Rothermere. So DMG, we before Lachlan Murdoch owned Nova, the Daily Mail group used to own Nova.
Yeah, okay.
So it was DMG and Lord Rothermere, who is like the head of the Daily Mail group around the world, still currently, didn't go to any other launch of any of the other radio stations ever, but he loved the Chili Peppers. So came to Perth and we launched the station. He stood behind me. And then do you remember the Llama Bar in Subiaco?
No.
So okay, so just underneath Nova in Perth on Hay Street was a place called the Llama Bar, which we used to pretty much just do everything at. So we'd go down, like we'd work and then go downstairs and get shit faced at the Llama Bar. So I ended up drinking a bucket of Coronas with Lord Rothermere after the launch, and it was a very surreal day. But yeah, it was I was so nervous. It was kind of a bit out of body experience, really. And I listened back a little bit, and I was like, hi. And then I was like, yeah, no wonder everyone didn't want me to launch the station. I was like in my very, very early 20s. It was pretty terrifying.
That's unreal. Now, you've been doing radio for what, 20 odd years now. What's a day-to-day look like now?
Well, it's pretty streamlined. I mean, I don't want to. Drive is pretty sweet. Drive is pretty cushy. Like I've done a lot of years of breakfast radio where the show kind of changes and evolves as the day goes because you follow the news and stuff. Pretty much everything's done by 4 o'clock in the day. Everyone's sussed. They're pretty relaxed. Someone taught me once that on breakfast, like your listeners are driving to the boss, and in drive, your listeners are driving away from the boss. Mm-hmm. So you can get away with a lot more. You can be a lot looser in the afternoon because people aren't as uptight as they were, 6 or 7 hours ago.
Yeah, that's fair.
So we kind of plan our show a bit, but the beauty of doing it, like, you mentioned Kate and Marty before, and then the beauty now doing it with Rickie and Joel is I've been very lucky to work with people whose egos don't really come into check because they're already very confident with who they are outside the room.
Yeah.
So we pretty much have this rule where they walk in very, very close to 4. We don't really spend a lot of time. Like Rickie and I are mates and hang out a lot on the weekend and stuff. And Joel and I have known each other for 12, 13 years. But as far as day-to-day goes, we don't really speak to each other. We don't have meetings. We don't really email each other anything, don't text each other anything. We don't, especially nothing about content. We talk about other stuff, but we were in contact. But the first time we really see each other is probably 5 to 4. And that was similar to how Kate and Marty and I work too. And mate, it's hard to say to start off your radio career like that because it's probably a bit harder. It's probably easy for me to sit here and say that, but I think that makes for the show that you hear every day is the fact that we are literally catching up and doing everything and hearing everything for the first time. Yeah. So our day-to-day, pretty much, I got in at 1 o'clock and planned the show, which is just a bit of some stuff that the guy, tell me if this is too getting into the...
Nah, go for it, man. This is good.
But yeah, the guys send in emails to about what they want to talk about to our producers, and then I kind of sift through it and place it in there. And then I'm just having an audio meeting now before I jumped on with you guys with my right hand, Dan Bazina. Shout out to Dan. I couldn't do it without him. He kind of gets all my audio for me, pops it up as the show goes. So we're just going through some stuff now for what to do on today's show. And literally I have between now and 4 o'clock to kill. So it's a pretty sweet day.
Beautiful. Sounds like a mid-gig.
You touched
on
it.
It's pretty good.
You touched on it briefly, but obviously in radio, a lot of times.
I'm sorry, what was your name again? I don't see that you don't follow me.
Joe. Obviously in radio, they do tend to move the talent around a bit. So I'm sure you've worked with a lot of people over your career. Yeah. How do you find adjusting to like a change in crew, especially when you might be pretty well established with how you were before?
Yeah, it's a tough one because again, because I've been here for 150 years, they do trust me. Like I did have a lot to do with the people we are working with, so that's a huge part of it. Like they don't just, I mean, early days and a lot of the time, and 99% of radio shows generally you put together with people you know. I mean, Marty and I had never met before we did our first radio show together, really. Actually, no, that's a lie. They made us go to a Broncos game on a Sunday. We were doing Brisbane breakfast and to get to know each other. And I got so hammered that I had our first show off. So Marty and I didn't work together on our first show on the Monday, so we started working together on the Tuesday. But yeah, I mean, like the last little while, like to me, I think that's the secret to the longevity. New team is a new energy and a new show. So I never expect Joel and Rickie to come and do the show that we used to do. You know, that's the key.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
it kind of has felt like this show's only been going just over a year now since Rickie's joined permanently.
You mentioned Marty then. You two were like, it appeared that you two were best mates for years. Do you still get to check in with him? He's obviously living in Melbourne now.
Yeah, always check in. I mean, the phone and the internet are a great thing. Obviously, the thing is when you're working on a radio show, you boys would know too. You find you end up just socializing and working with the same people because you all, you know, your jokes are the same, you're on the same level, and yeah. I mean, Marty and I used to speak to each other every day. That doesn't happen anymore, but you just kind of. Yeah, the great thing about what this job is that we have is the fact that it's such a social job, and yeah, as I said, I'm over at Rickie's place most days after the show, and when Joel comes up here, we have a good time together. So, yeah, it's the friendship helps. I mean, I have heard of radio shows that really hate each other. I struggle to work out how. I mean, I could name names. I know they're printed somewhere, but. Yeah, I mean, like, there's not. Yeah, I remember Wendy Harmer and Peter Moon used to not like each other a long time ago when I was growing up in Sydney on the morning crew. Wendy Harmer was in Sydney and Peter Moon was out of Melbourne, which was very unusual back then.
Yeah.
And they literally didn't speak to each other. And I think that is well documented. So that is not talking out of school. But yeah, I can't remember what your question was, but yeah, we stay in touch.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, cool. Obviously, Tim, you're very well established in the radio industry in Australia. You know, you've been at Nova for over 20 years and hosted some primetime national drive shows for the last 12 years, winning many ACRA's, Australian Commercial Radio Awards. But that always comes with a lot of mistakes along the way. What's the biggest error you've ever had on air?
Well, I think you only remember your last one, and I cannot believe this, but we were just mucking. We muck around a lot in this. Me and Rickie especially have a bit of a potty mouth, and that might come as a shock to some of your young listeners. You know, the host of Australian Idol and the all-round beautiful girl that is Ricki-Lee has one of the worst potty mouths of all time. So we kind of try and rib each other a bit right up until I turn the mics on. Because the other thing is, because I panel the show too, I always make a joke that I have their careers in my hands at all times. Like I turn the mic on and end them, basically. We were doing a live read for Guzman y Gomez, and I just said, get some fucking guac. But I don't know why. And it doesn't even make sense. It's not even funny. It's a stupid thing to say. Get some fucking guac. And I panicked. I dumped the fuck, but I only dumped it in 2 out of the 5 markets.
Right.
Because the dump button hadn't been used in Adelaide or something for ages, so they just let it go, and there's a whole wealth of technological issues. But at least I didn't say anything defamatory. But that's probably the biggest mistake of recent times. Yeah.
And did Guzmani get in contact and say, "You're gonna have to go again"?
They said, "Love ya."
Over the journey, who's the best person you've had the opportunity to speak with?
I use this one a bit because I regret basically Rihanna came in to this studio. This is the saddest thing about this story. That Rihanna came into this studio probably about 20 years, and I interviewed her when she did Pond to Replay. And she's kind of like just sitting there and rubbing her face, and she's like 17. I was like, you know, and I'm like, she just gave me nothing. Her mum sitting outside, like this is thinking it was the best ever, and she was kind of just like going like this, like just giving me one word answers and nothing. And then she walked out, and as she left, I was like, oh, God, that's the last we'll ever see her. And then I'm sitting in this room. Last year, did she do the Super Bowl? And I'm looking at the TV of her doing the Super Bowl in the same room that I'm in. So, I mean, there's so many people, because people like, you know, when you interview people, I find they really turn it on for you. So I've had a lot of great experiences. Like the best interview I've done recently, which I'm still chuffed that he did it, was Jack White chose me as his only Australian radio interview, and he did that for my podcast, which, believe me, boys, has very small streams. Like, I don't know how you guys get yourself out there, but I try very hard to push my Introducing with Tim Blackwell podcast at any opportunity. But the fact that Jack White and Jack Antonoff recently wanted to come on the pod, so those kind of things have been great because of the credibility side of it. Like, they obviously did some research and thought I was a pretty good interviewer.
Yeah,
but
cool.
the Rihanna one sticks out because I was such a dick and realized that I would never see this girl ever again.
Well, there you go.
I mean, the Chili Peppers would have to be the ones that stand out the most as the career highlight, because I've interviewed them probably about 15 times over my career, and Anthony Kiedis and Flea are just, like, to me, still gods, and they used to just give the best interviews. So yeah, they would still be my highlight. I know that's cliche, but
and it
yeah.
must be nice for them as well to see how far you've come when they come back into town and go, oh, this
I'm
bloke-
sure they really care about me. Yeah. I'm sure as soon as they touch down in Australia, like, I wonder what Tim's up to.
I'm now a huge, and we all are, but I'm a massive Sam Fender fan, and it is 100% because of you. Because you used to
what
play.
was the moment?
Hey?
What was the moment? What did I do?
You were playing him in it would have been 2019 from memory, and it used to intro a lot of I would listen to the podcast every single day when I'd go to work to a job that I didn't necessarily love, and it would get me through the day. But you'd always seem to start, or at least make heaps of mentions to Sam Fender, and it was Hypersonic Missiles, it was The Borders, it was all sorts of stuff from his first album. And from that moment on, I've just become a massive fan, and it's basically all because of you. How did you get involved with Tim? How did you get involved with Sam?
Well, look, I listen to like you guys maybe. I'm still a bit of a radio nerd, and I listen to a lot of Radio X, which is a UK radio station. I highly recommend it. The music's incredible. The jocks are awesome. They just, and it's also because the players, like, the UK is so huge. The radio stations can be a lot more niche. And the first time I ever heard him was "Play God." Do you know that song?
Yeah, beautiful.
So I heard that. Heard he was coming out to Splendor in the Grass. He had the big midday Friday slot. So that was the first time I've ever recorded a show, and went to make sure, because I go to Splendor every year, have done for 100 years. And I just made sure I was there for midday Friday to watch his set.
Yeah, wow.
And then I found out that one of my mates, Wally, was his guitar tech. So I just said to Wally, we've got to meet him, have a beer with him. And then him and I had a bit of a big night on that night at the Tackle Shack, and he's just like the loveliest guy. So I got him into the radio station. Like he was hanging around. He did one sideshow at the Horden, or not even the Enmore. I don't think it might, and I don't think it was sold out. Anyway, long story short, he came in, and he hadn't really done much commercial radio before. He was nervous as hell, but all he talked about was how, what a big night we had, blah blah blah. And so, and then again, a bit like Anthony Kiedis is proud of me, I'm proud of Sam Fender to see how far he's come. But yeah, to see him, I think I sent you a video at the Tackle Shack, not even in front of 40 people playing Hypersonic Missiles, just on a Fender guitar on his own. And then literally last year, I was in Hyde Park in London. There's probably 90,000 people there, and he was supporting the Rolling Stones. Unreal. So I was like, that's a pretty incredible turn of events there. He didn't want to catch up with me that night, unfortunately. I didn't get in touch with him that night. That's okay. He's busy. He's probably at Elton John's house or something.
Obviously, Tim, you studied at AFTRS to kick off your radio career. And you hear a lot of stories about people who start their career with like fellow colleagues, and then they don't really see each other for a little while, and then they both make it in the industry. Is there anyone you studied with or started out your career with early days, 20-odd years ago, that you now see kicking goals like you?
Well, yeah, but I never lost touch with him. So I used to, do you guys know Pagey? So Chris Page is one of my best mates. He used to anchor Triple M Breakfast in Sydney for a while, and he's a bit like me. He's kind of been he was at Southern Cross for over 20 years, and I used to pick him up in my red Toyota Starlet every morning and take him into radio school. And that's when Nova had first launched in Sydney. So, and we're both listening to American Rosso starting, and then you got the morning crew on Today FM, and then you've got Denton on Triple M and stuff. And all I ever wanted to do was work for Today FM and Triple M, and all he ever wanted to do was work for Nova. And we ended up graduating, and I went straight to Nova. He went straight to SCA. So I still see him all the time. There's no one else I really lost touch with. I know Cram was in my class. He's pretty big in Wollongong these days. But a lot of those people went off into different industries too. Because, I mean, the one thing you'll notice, boys, and this is probably true for you guys starting too, it's tough. Like, some people can't handle. Like I was very willing to. I moved to Perth, having never been there ever in my life before. The plane touched down. I had a 2-year contract and didn't know anyone. Had never been there before. Like, and for a young guy, like, I mean, I'm not saying I'm some kind of hero or anything, but a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people wake up, they want to live and work in their city. And for what we do, like, I mean, you guys are lucky now because you've started something that is going has a far reach. But I guess when I started, I had to be in the place that I was broadcasting to. So that was a big thing. So a lot of the people I went to afters with, I know aren't doing it anymore because they probably didn't realize that they had to pack their bags, and for for various reasons, they had their own reasons. But it was tough because I was moving around like crazy and knew that that's what I had to do.
Yeah, that's fair. You've obviously mentioned that like your life is radio in some regards. Would you ever consider, like, if you weren't doing radio, have you ever considered what you'd be doing instead?
I don't really know. I mean, the pizza delivery thing probably would be not as well paying. I don't know. I do a little bit of TV, and I do it like Getaway and a bit of Today Show and stuff like that. But every time I do TV, it makes me realize how much I love radio because there's so many more cooks in the kitchen, so many more meetings, so many more people on your email chain about everything else. So, man, I can't answer that. I don't think. I find that this is my only skill, and the beauty of this is having the new music podcast, which has kind of reignited my fire a bit because I can't have all these bands that I love so much come on the radio show. That was a big part of why I did it. So I think just staying within this business, but the beauty of podcasting now and stuff like that is I think we've been able to re-energize it. So yeah, I don't really have another answer. I'm sorry.
No,
I don't really have any other skills, you know.
In that regard, then, looking back on your career, 20 years.
Where did you go, by the way? What's that about? That wasn't very
Our camera stops after like 10 minutes, like the battery gets too full, so he has to quickly duck
I was going to
away.
say, it's like while you're talking, I just go like this. I'm like, oh, fuck you then.
Comes back with Uber Eats or something.
Yeah. Well, your next guest is here.
I love that most wouldn't mention it.
No,
They
no
just
one
say-
has so far. We've had likes of Hoppo.
Matt O'Kine's been on. We've had heaps of people, and no one else has ever made mention to you.
Someone called me out for it. Looking back on your career so far, obviously 22 successful years at Nova. What are you most proud of about your time in the industry?
Well, that I'm still here, I think. Like, that's the thing. Yeah, you've got to kind of just, you got to roll with it. You got to, I think, learning that, knowing the panel and knowing the desk and knowing all that stuff is really important. But yeah, I think the fact that I'm still doing it is probably what I'm most proud of because I don't take that for granted at all, you know?
Yeah, fantastic.
Which sometimes I do, obviously around ratings time and stuff. I'm joking.
But I think what I realized when we started to come into communication, Tim, obviously understanding that you'd been there for 22 years, and there's a reason places like this keep people like you around because you're an all-round good bloke.
Well, that's very nice of you guys. That's very lovely. But yeah, it's well, it's like you get to the beauty of this job as well as you do get to meet people. Like I get to meet people like you, and I get to meet people who I look up to, and most careers and most people are pretty blinkered with who they get to see and who they get to meet. So that's the beauty of this job as well. Even though I've been technically sitting in this chair for a long time, it does feel like I've had different reincarnations and getting to meet new people along the way. So that's been the best part of it, really. I mean, that sounds real cheesy, but it's true.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah. Obviously, you've had quite the amazing career, but what goals do you still have that you hope to achieve?
I see. That's a hard one too because I really like this job. I really like drive, and I really like the fact that we get to speak to the whole country, and that I get to go to other parts of the country, and they know the show. So I mean, I'd love this to stay pretty steady. I mean, and I'd like to give breakfast a go again one day, but I think down the track a bit more. Like I'm enjoying the lifestyle that these hours bring a little bit too much. But yeah, I think maybe if I have a goal at the moment is to keep growing my new music podcast and just keep doing that as consistently as possible because I kind of self-produce that and it's all independent and it's kind of a labor of love at the moment. So I'm really enjoying that. So yeah, just for things to stay the same for a bit longer, just a bit longer.
Yeah, cool. What do you reckon now that you've spent 20 years plus in the industry? What do you reckon you would say to an 18-year-old version of yourself who's just about to get involved?
I think it's meet as many people as you can. Don't be precious. Kind of do all the jobs. Look. I know this is really unpopular these days, especially, but do stuff for free.
Yeah.
I mean, like the fact that, like, one of the things I used to go into Andrew Denton's studio at Triple M in Sydney before school in my school uniform. I'd make them coffees. I'd alphabetize CDs. There's always something. I mean, like corporate rules have changed a bit. I don't think it's easy anymore for some weird reason to have people come in, but ring around like you guys have, get in touch with people that you admire. I think that's the other thing. Like, get in touch with people that you look up to, because I reckon most of them will get back to you. I think most people are very happy to encourage people to do or to come into the business that they do. Because even though media, we have a bit of an ego and we're peer up ourselves, most of us I really want to help out. And so I think that's the advice I would give, is just do as much as you can, meet as many people as you can, get your flying hours up,
Yeah.
like just do 100 podcasts a week. Even, I don't know, even if you haven't got anyone to interview, 100 a week. Even if you haven't got anyone to interview, just sit and talk to each other about something. Make it, if it goes for 15 minutes, goes 15 minutes, but just keep doing it and do it as much as you can and meet as many people as you can.
Yeah, fantastic. On the flip side of that, what do you reckon an 18-year-old version of Tim Blackwell would say to the current version of Tim Blackwell? Would he look and be very pleased?
Ease up a bit. Ease up a bit. Go home earlier.
Very good.
I love it.
Cool.
How do you deal with like the hate and whatnot that comes with expectation? Because obviously, like if you're successful in your family, you're not going to get much hate. But if you're successful on like a national platform, as much as you get people who are positive, you're going to get people who are negative. How do you tend to deal with that?
I kind of feel that when you put yourself out there and do what we do, like, I mean, not that I'm hardly controversial on our end, but surely, I mean, well, people either like you or hate you. I mean, I listen to things, I watch things, I go, you just hate it or you love it.
Yeah.
There's not really many things that you're like, that's not bad, so I'll just keep. But I mean, look, I don't mind so much, because I guess this probably comes from age a bit. I started out without social media, so I kind of look at it and think it's pretty funny. It's certainly never been my defining. Like I've been on traditional media my whole life, so I understand why people who have just been on Instagram since the age of 12 would see that as a big deal. I'm also confident in what I do. I'm confident with the people I'm around, and I know we do a good show every day. So if I ever see anything on there that's negative, I think it's more funny than anything else. And I've found that that's pretty similar for Rickie and Joel, especially too. Like we troll through. I think Joel was called a bloated piss bag on the internet the other day, which we couldn't stop laughing about. So, I mean, look, I'm not saying it doesn't. I don't probably cop it as much as those two, obviously, because they're much more successful and much more well-rounded than me. But I think hate just comes with the business. Like, you can't expect anyone to love you all the time. And yeah, I think that's as long as you're confident in what you're doing, it's pretty easy to not let it affect you,
There's obviously got to be a bit of love, though. Obviously, Tim, your voice gets heard coast to coast across Australia from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. every weekday for most weeks of the year. Do you find that when you start to talk to people, they give you a bit of a weird look when they recognize your voice?
Yeah, so this is the great thing about what radio has brought. I'm famous enough for people to not want to come over and get a photo with. So people might at a pub or whatever, they go, buggers. And then that's it. That's all I get. And can I
It's like
can
a
I say
bingo
one?
card. They work past and just go, I've seen
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. And I definitely get a look like someone thought I was at a bolo down at Currarong down the south coast of New South Wales about a year and a half ago. And the girl behind the bar thought I was Andy Lee and just kept shouting me beers. So I just let that go. And I was like, can't wait to tell Ham about this. And the best one I ever got, and this is pre-recorded, so you can do whatever you want with this, but this is why I love Brisbane so much. I literally got off the plane in Brisbane, and there's a bloke with it in a green ute that just was speeding away from departure with the window down. He goes, "Black as you can't." But it was the best compliment I ever received. So yeah, there's a lot of love out there, and it is nice, and I love radio love, because you do, again, very cheesy and very cliche, but they do feel like that people think that you are their friends because you are very personally in their lives. Some people are in the shower with you, some people, just in the car, whatever it is. But radio's got that beautiful, intimate relationship. And as I said, it's nice to have that kind of level of fame where people don't really want to bug you either.
Yeah.
But mostly it's confused looks. Mostly it's like, where is that? Did I go to school with him?
It's definitely on a bus somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right.
Do you get to hang out with other people in radio? Like, obviously, being in radio yourself, you mentioned like Hamish, Andy. I know you're mates with Fitzy, Whip. What's that like?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I mean, Jace, who's just started in Melbourne, I used to call it a Labby. Like, Labby and I used to pretty much have parallel careers our whole life. He's just started on Nova Breakfast with Lauren.
Yep.
So yeah, it's actually kind of nice to be the age I am now to have a lot of my friends who have been kicking around for a long time doing it, which is pretty great. Like, same I go to Brisbane and I hang out with Lutzy. Like, we are all kind of one big family because we are a specific kind of breed of people. Like, a lot of people don't get our humor and maybe like as many beers as we do and go as hard as we do. So it is nice to have friends all littered around the country. That's for sure.
Yeah, very cool.
Cool. When it comes to your voice, obviously, you went to school to train for radio. How much of it is vocal? Is any of it?
I don't know. Now, not so much. I mean, Joel will probably answer that one better than me with his with his nasal voice. I think, again, it's not something I really learnt or was taught. I knew I had a deep voice, so I do a lot of voiceovers and stuff like that, which is fun. But I don't think it's as important as what it used to be. It used to be very important, and I was taught at radio school to drink lukewarm liquids, so room temperature liquids, nothing too cold, nothing to do this. I'm like, none of that stuff. Like, it is what it is. I think if you're engaging and entertaining, and I also think like doing it with friends and being able to show, like, doing a solo shift is very different, obviously, from doing something with a group of people, Captain Obvious. But I even think 3 is better than 2. Like, I've found sometimes, Joel goes off to Eurovision soon, and it will just be Ricky and I. And even though it's fine, it's a very different show. Like, you're leaning into different skills and stuff like that. So I think 3 is perfect. I think having a laugh, and I don't think it really matters about your voice anymore. It's about how engaging you are and genuine you are, and having a laugh, really. It's pretty simple.
Jake put this in good words the other day when he was we were talking about when we started doing more radio stuff with Joe, and it goes from like...
Yeah, you have different combos.
Yeah, like when
it's Riley and I, for example, it's just me talking to him talking to me. But when you've got a third person, you've got the combination of like all 3. So me talking to Riley, me talking to Joe, them talking to each other, and us all talking together.
Quadruples.
So it just immediately changes the whole dynamic of everything.
Yeah, and it kind of just adds a bit of energy to it. Like, there's a part of me that thinks that 3 in the afternoon or at night is better. Maybe 3 in the morning is a bit like, I don't know. Again, it's that time of day. Like, your listeners are feeling different things at different times of day. Like, but 3's always been that's the kind of dinner table that you want to be on when you're at the boring restaurant with your girlfriend or something. You're like, oh, those guys are having a much better time than we are. Like, that's what I want our show to be all the time. That table that you want to be on that you're not currently on right now. And I think 3 really lifts that up, especially 3 very different sounding people and three very different personalities and stuff like that. So it's been good. I really like working in the 3.
There you go.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Very good.
Anything else?
Bloody hell, you've answered every question I could ever have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim. We can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your work day as well. I understand it seems somewhat lax based on what you've explained, but nonetheless, it is what 2:30 over there.
I'm going to walk down and get a coffee now and then walk back up real slow and catch up with a few people on level 3. But no, thank you, boys. And as I said, like, you guys, you sound awesome. And I think it's only big things from here. So I really appreciate coming on and you taking the time. And you've done your research too. I like that. So thanks very much.
We're big fans. Before we do go, with every guest that comes on the MacPack, you're a bit of a cricket guy. They do like, how like a baggy green works and they have like a number in place on the side.
Yeah.
We'll get this one out to you. You're joining the VI pack. So our MacPack VI pack with number 26 on your cap, mate. So we'll be sure to get that one out to you.
You must have had 25 very impressive people before me. Who was number 1?
Number one goes to us. So we get the first 3.
Okay.
You can't involve the party and not be part of the party yourself.
No, I like this. Yeah, this is good.
We had Hoppo.
So basically,
Hoppo's
you guys wanted hats.
Yeah. Hoppo's got 23, Matterkind 24.
Yeah.
Slowly building it out.
Black is 26.
There you go.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'll wear it with pride.
You're a good man. Thank you so much for joining us, mate. We can't thank you enough.
Appreciate your time.
Cheers, boys.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Tim Blackwell, what a superstar.
A gem of the industry and a gem of Australia.
I think the biggest thing for mine, like coming out of that chat, and even obviously being during the chat, he made mention to the fact that he was the first voice that people heard on Nova when Nova was first introduced.
In Perth, yeah.
And he still is the voice of Nova for so many people. He's been doing the job for 22 years. And with that, in my opinion, would come with, I wouldn't be shocked I wouldn't even think anything negative of it if he just went, "No, mate, don't really
I
want
don't
to chat to you and your brothers in Perth. Like, that's not
Yeah.
something I want to do."
Yeah.
But that just never
100%.
came across. He was just so loving. So, yeah, every time we've spoken with him over the last couple of weeks, it's been nothing but an absolute joy.
That's it.
Yeah, I think also, like Riley said, that longevity probably has something to do with why him being so nice
Yeah,
is why he's still there.
100%. No, he's a superstar. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the chat half as much as we did. He's a very funny man as well. You can tell he's very comfortable and confident in his skin. And I love that he called both you cunts out. That was a highlight of mine.
Well deserved as well. All the visual listeners will appreciate that because they'll see me walking off camera pretty frequently over the years that we've done the show.
Yeah.
And now finally someone's called us out for it on air.
It's good to see. Boys, absolute pleasure. Still a bit of a we've had some. We love talking to people that we just want to talk to. We've sort of had a general rule where like we're not going to chat to people unless we're interested in talking to them.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Don't just do interviews for the sake.
and like people who are listening, they'll obviously be interested as well. But I don't really want to get like John Cena involved because I don't necessarily like care. Do you know what I mean? Like he might be the biggest guest you could get, and I'm like, yeah, but what am I going to chat to him about? And also, if you can't see him, you can't see him. That seems a bit.
So John, just keep listening, but sorry, we're not going to have you on.
Maybe one day, Johnny.
And I will return your calls at some stage. Boys, until we do this exciting, we go from one big guest to another next week, obviously, as we do each and every year. It's Mother's Day. We are joined by, she's not Nova's finest, but she is the McKenna's finest. We're joined by our lovely mother.
That's right.
On the podcast, we're going to do another Mother's Day episode. So if you've got questions for Mum, ping them in. We'd absolutely love to hear them. And I think she would love a mention in the Tim Blackwell episode as well. I think she's
She'll get a kick out of
she'll
this.
be absolutely enjoying this. Boys, until we do this week with our darling mother, thank you again to Tim Blackwell. Stay safe, stay blessed, and always remember to
Go give your mum a hug.
it's ciao for now. Bye not forever.